There's a moment that sneaks up on you. Not loud, not obvious. Just a quiet change. One day, your children needed you for everything. They clung to your leg when they were scared, asked 1,000 questions when they were curious, called you first when something went wrong. You were their world. But then, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. A shorter phone call. A distracted nod when you spoke. A birthday forgotten. Not just the date, but the thought behind it. You told yourself they were just busy. You gave them grace again and again. Until one day you realized you're no longer seen the way you once were. It's not always disrespect. Sometimes it's indifference. A silence that cuts deeper than any argument. You speak, and they don't really hear. You ask, and they offer excuses. You try to connect, and they pull away. Politely, maybe, but unmistakably. That's the moment many parents feel their hearts break quietly. Because it doesn't come with a dramatic goodbye or a final betrayal. It comes with slowly being tuned out of their lives. A creeping invisibility. You don't even know when it happened. Just that now, your words carry less weight, your presence less importance. And you start asking yourself, what did I do wrong? The truth? Probably nothing. This shift happens to countless aging parents. It's part of a painful paradox. When children grow up, they want independence, but sometimes that independence comes with emotional distance. And in their eyes, you may start to look less like a guide and more like a relic of another time. Not intentionally, not maliciously, but painfully nonetheless. So if you felt this change, if your once close bond now feels like a strained silence, you're not imagining it. You're not alone. And most importantly, it's not too late to shift things again. Because even though the silence was unspoken, your response can be powerful. It begins not with confrontation, but with awareness. Not by demanding their attention, but by reclaiming your voice, your energy, your dignity. In the chapters ahead, we'll talk about exactly how. Number 1. Respect doesn't fade overnight, but it can return. Respect doesn't vanish like a switch being flipped. It drifts, quietly, gradually, until one day you notice it's gone. You might remember a time when your children hung on to your every word, when your opinion meant something, when your presence brought comfort. But over the years, something changed. They stopped asking, stopped listening. Sometimes they even speak to you with a tone you don't recognize. Distant, dismissive, even condescending. It hurts. Of course it does. But here's a truth that might surprise you. This emotional distance often isn't intentional. Most adult children don't wake up one day and decide to stop respecting their parents. It happens little by little, through habits, assumptions, and unspoken expectations. Maybe you offered help a few too many times and it became expected. Maybe they started making decisions without asking, and you stayed silent to avoid tension. Maybe they rolled their eyes once, and you let it slide. Slowly, patterns formed, not out of cruelty, but out of convenience. And what once was mutual respect became something else entirely, routine dismissal. But here's the good news. What's formed by habit can be reshaped by intention. Respect can return. It won't come through guilt trips or raised voices. It doesn't come from reciting your sacrifices or demanding to be heard. It comes from shifting the dynamic, starting with how you see yourself. When you begin to speak with calm certainty, when you honor your own time and energy, when you stop saying yes to things that make you feel invisible. That's when things begin to change. Not overnight, but steadily, quietly, like a tide coming back in. You don't need to beg for their attention. You just need to show them, through your actions, that your presence still holds weight, that your words matter, not because you insist they do, but because you carry yourself like they do. In the chapters to come, we'll explore exactly how to do this, step by step, because it's not too late to rebuild respect, not by going backward, but by standing taller now, You haven't lost them completely. You've simply forgotten how much power still lives in your calm presence. Number 2. The more you chase, the further they pull away. When you start feeling that distance, when the calls slow down, when your advice gets brushed aside, your first instinct might be to fix it, to prove your worth again. You offer to help more. You say yes even when it costs you. You make yourself smaller just to stay connected. But here's the heartbreak. The more you chase, the more they pull away. It's not that your children don't love you. It's not that you're unworthy of respect. It's simply that people, yes, even family, often value what stands tall, not what always bends. Maybe you've said yes to babysitting when you were exhausted, just so they'd see you as helpful. Maybe you've stayed silent during conversations that made your stomach turn, just to avoid being called difficult. Maybe you've gone out of your way to buy them something, check in, or rearrange your life for them, only to be met with silence, or worse, indifference. And in those quiet moments afterward, you're left wondering, what more do I have to do to be seen? But here's the truth. Emotional self-sacrifice does not win respect. It wins dependence, sometimes even quiet resentment. People may take what you give, but they stop looking up to you. Not because they're bad or selfish, but because the relationship shifts. You become the person who's always available, always agreeable, always giving, no matter how you're treated. Respect is not earned by becoming invisible. It's earned by being whole. You don't need to prove your love through exhaustion. You don't need to give endlessly to be appreciated. What you need is to pause and ask, am I giving out of love, or out of fear that if I stop, they'll forget me entirely? When you begin choosing your own peace over constant approval, something remarkable happens. Your children start noticing, not because you said more, but because you said less with more certainty, because you stopped chasing and started standing. Respect often returns not through louder voices or longer to-do lists, but through quiet dignity, through boundaries, through presence. You are not here to earn love through sacrifice. You are here to live loved without begging for it. Number 3. Why calm is more powerful than complaints. There's a moment every parent knows well, when a conversation turns sharp. You offer a suggestion and your child snaps. Or worse, they dismiss you with a sigh, a look, a cold silence that says, "Not now." Your instinct kicks in. Defend yourself. Remind them who raised them. Maybe even raise your voice to be heard. But here's something most people don't realize until much later in life. Calm is not weakness. It's power in its purest form. Complaints often feel good in the moment. You get it off your chest. You finally say what you've been bottling up for months, maybe years. But how often does it change anything? Most of the time, it only deepens the divide. Calm, on the other hand, does something complaints never can. It unsettles the disrespect. Imagine this. You're at dinner. Your son cuts you off mid-sentence. You take a deep breath, look him in the eye, and say gently, "I'd like to finish what I was saying." No anger, no accusation, just presence. That moment may pass quickly. He may shrug or roll his eyes, but something shifts. Because you didn't react, you led. There's dignity in stillness, in choosing not to argue, in saying this is who I am, without demanding they recognize it. That kind of self-control doesn't shout, it radiates. And people, especially adult children, notice that. There's a reason why the elders who are most respected aren't the loudest or the most agreeable. They are the ones who remain centered, who speak with few words but mean every one of them, who don't plead or whine or guilt trip, but instead embody the kind of calm that makes others pause. Complaints come from a place of wanting to be heard, but calm comes from already knowing your worth. And when your children see you carry yourself with that kind of quiet strength, they start listening, not out of guilt, but out of respect. So next time the urge to shout rises in your chest, pause, breathe, choose clarity over noise. Let your calm be the loudest thing in the room. Number 4. How to quietly change the dynamic. Sometimes the shift back to respect doesn't come from big speeches or heart-to-hearts. It comes from tiny changes, almost invisible, but powerful. If your adult children have grown used to interrupting you, brushing off your words, or talking to you as if you're fragile or irrelevant, there's a way to gently shift that dynamic without confrontation. It starts with how you speak. Try this. The next time you're interrupted, don't rush to continue. Pause. Let the silence linger just a second longer than usual. Then say, calmly, "I'd like to finish what I was saying." No tone, no drama, just clarity. That one sentence, spoken slowly, deliberately, can carry more weight than an hour-long argument. Speak a little slower than you normally would, not to sound unsure, but to signal, "I expect to be heard." When we rush our words, we unconsciously signal that we're trying to squeeze them in, hoping someone won't cut us off. But when you slow down and pause, you train others to lean in. Another quiet shift? Refusing to over-explain. Many older adults feel the need to justify every decision, to prove they're still sharp. But confidence speaks in fewer words. You don't need to explain why you're unavailable or defend your opinions endlessly. A simple, "That doesn't work for me," or "I've decided to handle it this way," is enough. Let the silence do the rest. Set conversational boundaries without anger. If someone raises their voice or speaks to you disrespectfully, you can say, "I'm happy to continue this conversation when it's respectful." Then calmly change the subject or excuse yourself. That one line, used consistently, teaches others how to treat you without a fight. These shifts might feel small, even unnatural at first, but over time, they send a powerful message. I value myself, and I expect others to do the same. You don't need to demand respect. You just need to stop accepting less than you deserve. And slowly, quietly, the dynamic will change. Number 5. One small boundary that changes everything. It doesn't take a long speech. It doesn't require confrontation. Sometimes the biggest change begins with a single, quiet line in the sand. Robert had always been the easygoing parent, the peacekeeper, the one who stayed quiet during family tension and smiled through discomfort. His grown children were used to it. They interrupted him, made jokes at his expense, and made big decisions about his life without asking. He told himself it wasn't worth the fight. He didn't want drama. But one evening at dinner, his son cut him off mid-sentence for the third time. And this time, instead of swallowing it, Robert simply paused, looked up, and said in a calm, even tone, "You don't have to agree with everything I say, but I expect to be spoken to with respect." That was it. No anger, no raised voice, no guilt trip, just a boundary. The table went quiet. His children looked surprised, but they heard him. Over the following weeks, something subtle began to shift. They interrupted less. They listened more. The tone softened. Not because Robert fought harder for their attention, but because he showed them, with quiet clarity, what he would and wouldn't tolerate. Boundaries don't push people away. They show people where respect begins. Too often, older adults avoid setting limits because they fear losing connection. But the opposite is often true. When you calmly, kindly hold your ground, you teach others how to love you better. You remind them that your time, your voice, and your presence are not to be taken for granted. It doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be one small sentence. I won't be part of conversations that turn disrespectful. I'm happy to help, but not last minute anymore. I'll visit, but I'd like to be asked, not expected. These are not demands. They're dignified invitations to treat you with care. And the moment you speak them aloud, something changes. Not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. That's the boundary that changes everything. Number 6. Rediscovering your voice. Without raising it. There comes a moment, often quietly and without warning, when you realize something has been missing. Not the sound of your children's voices or their presence in your home, but your own voice in your life. You've spent years giving, supporting, holding families together. And in doing so, sometimes your own needs, opinions, and even your identity can fade into the background. You begin to ask, do they even see me anymore? But maybe the more important question is, do I still honor myself? This isn't about shouting to be heard. It's not about long speeches or emotional outbursts. It's about remembering that your voice, steady, thoughtful, and calm, still carries weight. Consider this shift in thinking. Instead of saying, "Why don't they listen to me?" try saying, "What truth do I need to speak clearly and without apology?" That might sound like, "I'd love to be part of this decision. My thoughts matter too. I'm not here to argue, but I will speak honestly. Let's talk when we're both calm and ready to listen." These aren't aggressive demands. They're confident reminders that your presence has value, and that respect begins with how you respect yourself. There's a quiet power in calm expression. Neuroscience shows that when someone speaks slowly and firmly, it actually activates a deeper listening response in others. That means your soft voice, rooted in dignity and self-respect, can be more influential than yelling ever could. This chapter is not about getting your way. It's about reclaiming your sense of self. The more you honor your own needs, boundaries, and truths, the more others are invited to do the same. Not always right away, but over time, consistency creates change. So the next time you feel ignored, don't ask, "How can I make them see me?" Ask instead, "How can I show up fully for myself, regardless of who's watching?" Because rediscovering your voice doesn't mean making noise. It means choosing words that reflect your worth and saying them with peace. Number 7. Your life is not a backstage pass to theirs. There's a quiet truth many parents eventually face. Your children grow up, build lives of their own, and sometimes forget you were once the center of theirs. You might find yourself waiting for the phone to ring, for an invitation, for a simple moment where you're included. And when those moments don't come, the hurt is real. But here's the hard truth wrapped in hope. Their life is not your stage, and yours is not backstage. You weren't meant to linger behind the curtain, peeking in for glimpses of their attention. You deserve to stand in the spotlight of your own story, even now, especially now. Too often we measure our days by their texts, their visits, their updates. And when they're absent, it feels like a reflection of our worth. But it's not. Their absence doesn't make your life small. Their silence doesn't mean you don't matter. In fact, reclaiming your independence is one of the most respectful and powerful things you can do. Ask yourself, what brings me joy outside of being a parent? What dream did I put aside years ago that still whispers to me? When was the last time I did something just for myself, with no one to impress, no one to wait on? Self-respect doesn't wait for permission. It doesn't need validation. It begins the moment you stop asking, "Do they see me?" and start asking, "Do I see myself?" You can still love your children deeply and build a beautiful life without hovering in theirs. You can root for them from afar while also planting new seeds for your own growth. And ironically, the more you live fully, the more likely they are to come back, not out of guilt, but curiosity and admiration. So no, your life is not a backstage pass to theirs. It is its own powerful, unfolding story, and it deserves center stage, now more than ever. Number 8. What happens when you pull back with love? There's a moment many parents fear, pulling back. It feels counterintuitive. You've spent decades showing up, giving more, doing whatever it takes to stay close. So the idea of doing less? Of stepping back, not out of anger but with quiet intention, that feels like giving up. But in reality, pulling back with love isn't abandonment. It's trust. and it can change everything. When you release the grip of expectations, when you stop texting first every time, stop reminding them of your presence, stop overextending just to be noticed, something subtle happens. The air clears, the pressure lifts, and in that space your children feel the shift. They begin to wonder, they begin to remember, they begin to return, not always with grand gestures but in small, authentic ways. A quick check-in, a warm memory shared, an unexpected visit that isn't driven by guilt, but by choice. There's something magnetic about a parent who loves without chasing. It creates room for your adult children to re-enter the relationship on their own terms. Not because you begged, not because you reminded them how much you've given, but because you became someone whose calm presence feels safe, steady, and peaceful. This doesn't mean disappearing. It doesn't mean shutting down or going silent. It means offering warmth without strings, interest without interrogation, love without expectation. And yes, it takes time. You might go weeks without much change, but over and over again, families have rediscovered connection not through pushing, but through patience. Remember, you are not powerless when you pull back. You're actually choosing the most powerful thing of all, dignified love. Love that says, I'm here, I care, but I also respect myself enough not to beg for scraps of attention. And often, it's in this posture of quiet strength that something amazing happens. Respect returns, warmth rekindles, and the relationship, once strained by too much reaching, begins to grow roots again, slowly but deeply. So, if you're tired of being the only one trying, consider pulling back, not in anger, but in love. You might be surprised who steps forward. Start here. One calm act of self-respect. You don't need to change your whole life overnight. You don't need a perfect conversation, a magical reunion, or a grand gesture to feel whole again. All you need is one quiet act of self-respect. That could mean saying no to a request that drains you. It could mean taking a long walk without guilt. It might simply mean sitting in a chair with your favorite book, your favorite tea, and the radical thought, I matter, even if they haven't said it lately. Because here's the truth, your worth has never depended on how often your phone rings or how many invitations you get. Your value is not measured by their words or silence. It begins with how you treat yourself when no one's watching. Sometimes the most powerful thing a parent can do is not to fix, but to pause. To stop reaching for what's not being offered and start building strength inside instead. It doesn't mean you've given up on love. It means you're giving love a calmer place to return to. And respect, it doesn't bloom overnight, but it grows faster in spaces where boundaries are clear and your presence is peaceful. When you stop reacting, stop proving, stop explaining, and start simply being, something shifts. Your children might not notice it right away, but deep down they will feel it. So don't wait for the perfect time to reclaim your voice. Don't wait for an apology that may never come. Start with a single act that reminds you, you are still here, still whole, still worthy. Maybe it's telling yourself, I don't need to overgive to be loved. Maybe it's choosing not to respond to a disrespectful comment. Maybe it's looking in the mirror and saying, I choose peace today. Whatever it is, let it be yours. Let it be calm. Let it be the beginning. Because the journey back to connection, to respect, to being seen, doesn't start with them. It starts with you. And you are enough.